Suicide Squad is problematic, to say the least. The editing has ADHD, the imagery is ugly, and sleazy corporate desperation coats every decision. But the faulty linchpin here is the writing, on multiple levels.
I like her.
There's a failure in conflict, where the powers of the villains don't match the powers of the heroes.
And I know what you want.
There's a failure in character logic, involving anything with the Joker.
The itch in my crotch. The one, the only, the infamous Harley Quinn.
And maybe even an ethical failure.
Get up there, smack on her ass, tell her knock this shit off.
But I want to look at something small, something invisible, hopefully. Dialogue. Is it possible to take one scene and rewrite the dialogue to make it better?
This is Katana. She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
Writing the dialogue down, it's not as bad as you might think, which tells me the presentation is at fault, mostly. First, because of the conditions of the helicopter, Rick Flag has to shout his lines as loudly as he can.
This is Katana!
Which doesn't let Joel Kinnaman control his voice. Second, because of the breakneck speed of this movie, every line is edited back to back, giving every line equal importance. The longest pause is only a second long. The shortest pauses are between two of the most trivial lines and two of the most important lines. She's got my back should not be as important as her sword traps the souls of its victims. That's why this scene is funny. It's like the joke is a series of normal descriptions and a wacky one at the end.
Klaus Daimler, 40, engineer. Calm, collected, German.
Every line snaps at you like a never-ending grocery list.
This is Katana! She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
That helps, but the dialogue still isn't great and the information isn't delivered properly. So how would I approach the scene? When I write, I start by listing all the information I need to convey. Her name is Katana. Katana is here to protect Rick Flag, or more simply, Katana and Rick Flag are on the same team. Katana is good at using a sword, and her sword traps the souls of its victims. So personally, I don't think all of this exposition should be in one scene, especially considering the unnecessary flashback. They introduce Katana 49 minutes into the movie for 8 seconds before cutting away to something irrelevant. Maybe there's a better way to introduce a silent Japanese super assassin. But if DC forced me to condense Katana's introduction, how do I make this work? Well, first I consider what should be said explicitly and what can be implied within the fabric of the scene.
This is Katana!
Her name doesn't need to be shouted out to anybody, it just needs to be said before some other line.
She's got my back!
I can also imply that Katana and Rick Flag work together without shouting it out to anybody. Noticing a pattern? Rick Flag considers himself above these prisoners.
The psychotic antisocial freaks, it makes no sense. Let me hit the tier 1 units and I'll build your team of pipe hitters who'll do anything you can dream up. I mean, you need real soldiers, not these scumbags.
Why would he introduce her to them? Well, because he's not introducing Katana to the Suicide Squad, he's introducing Katana to us. It makes more sense for him not to introduce her for 2 reasons. One, it shows a mutual respect between Rick and Katana. You know, part of the information we're trying to convey. And 2, it reinforces who we should empathize with. Suicide Squad already has a disadvantage of being an ensemble film about anti-heroes.
Don't forget, we're the bad guys.
But if you can separate the Suicide Squad even further from the government, then it reinforces who I should care about.
She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn.
I also don't think the audience needs to be told that Katana is an awesome sword master, especially when we are just shown this. Typically, a character who uses a weapon doesn't have to announce their skill level. If a character is shown with a weapon, it's understood that they're at least competent with that weapon.
It's okay, I'm a cop.
And then later, you get to find out just how experienced they are.
Thanks for the advice.
or inexperienced.
Okay, this is where I don't want to be. Yikes.
I wonder if it's loaded. No.
So I'm going to chalk that one up to visual storytelling. So the only idea that we need to convey explicitly is the fact that her sword traps the souls of its victims. And there's also room for a quippy interaction with Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn, nice to meet ya. Love your perfume. What is that? The stench of death?
Okay, let's write a script. So the first thing we need to convey, her name. Again, not announced to everybody. Katana. The throwaway lines at the beginning work just fine and help establish their relationship.
You're late.
Katana, you're late. I was busy. Now I'm going to use some visual storytelling. All of the camera angles are flat. There's not a single close-up on her sword in this scene. Everyone is way too close together, and Katana just stands there awkwardly like the Oscar for Best Achievement in Makeup and Hairstyling. So I'm going to add a little tension and weight to her as a character. Katana walks through the plane slowly. Her steps are calculated and efficient. The Suicide Squad watches her descend into the plane before Katana stops by Rick Flag. She gives Rick a fist bump with one hand, close up on her other hand, gripping her sword. Okay, now to tackle the concept of a soul-stealing sword. Side note, let's talk about word choice. This is an underappreciated art when it comes to writing. You can teach 3-act structures, set up some payoffs, but writing natural dialogue with rhythm, you either get it or you don't.
Why don't you put that on your Good Morning Missouri fucking wake-up broadcast, bitch?
Word choice is so difficult because you have hundreds of words at your disposal, and knowing what sounds right isn't easy. But as a writer, I like playing around with options. When I write dialogue, I consider these things. How does it sound on its own? How does it sound next to something else? And is it clear?
I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
Just deconstructing the word choice, the second sentence actually works. It's clear and it sums up exactly what the sword does. The problem is the sentence before it. When we read, our brains do an amazing job at interpreting the meaning of a sentence. But if we try to read something out loud, our mouths can be a limitation. To me, I would advise is clunky. It also forces the rest of the sentence into a corner with not getting killed by her. Since there's no clean opposite of being killed, the whole sentence has to be structured around a negative. The Elements of Style is a helpful book. If you're stuck on a complicated sentence, it's best to simplify. Ask yourself, what am I trying to say? Or rather, what is Rick Flag trying to say? Honestly, that works. It's clear, it's concise, and the actor can actually say the line. But it's a little direct, so I'll add something to soften it. A little advice, don't let her kill you, her sword traps the souls of its victims. Good. So that fixes the original line, but the placement is still obnoxious. Rick Flag is still listing attributes of Katana for no reason. The unsung hero of dialogue is, a second person. So one person isn't just monologuing throughout the scene. Often a second character's dialogue is used as a setup for the first character's punchline.
$1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool? You? $1 billion.
Tarantino does this really well.
I want you to go in that bag and find my wallet.
Which one is it?
It's the one that says bad motherfucker.
If you isolated the punchline, it doesn't work on its own. We don't know what its is, and if you tried to make this exchange work in one sentence, it wouldn't have any rhythm to it. The line would feel stilted and really weird. So notice how the scene is constructed so that we understand what's happening and it ends on a cool punchline.
I want you to go in that bag and find my wallet.
This sentence outlines the situation. Jules wants his wallet.
Which one is it?
This is a completely logical thing to say, but think about the function of that sentence. It's designed to set up something greater.
It's the one that says bad motherfucker.
In Suicide Squad, the dialogue is too divided. You have a long list of expositional traits, and then Harley Quinn attempts to say something funny.
Love your perfume. What is that? The stench of death?
But her joke isn't related to the rest of the scene. This is why I classify a lot of the humor in Suicide Squad as random.
Ooh, it's fire.
Ooh. Or it relies on ironic humor.
She seems nice.
It's funny because she doesn't seem nice. See, my problem with Harley Quinn and the Joker is they say illogical things under the guise of being crazy.
I am not someone who is loved. I'm an idea.
And this is where a lot of supposedly quirky humor pops up. But crazy people don't behave illogically. Crazy people behave logically based on delusional thinking or faulty coping habits. For instance, if someone with OCD believes something bad will happen if they don't flip a light switch 3 times.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes?
Why are you doing everything in threes?
Oh, so Charlie doesn't die.
What?
Then it's logical to flip the light switch, it's just that the original premise is flawed. At best, people with mental illnesses lack filters and social graces, and say whatever they want.
Love your perfume. What is that? The stench of death?
But usually they don't turn around and say the exact opposite of what they just said.
She seems nice.
So instead, I want Harley Quinn to purposely antagonize Katana and let that feud be a way for Rick Flag to give us more exposition. And at the same time, giving all 3 of these characters a power dynamic that makes sense. At this point, I think it's better to show you.
Katana, you're late.
What's up?
Oh, sword. I've been meaning to trim my bangs.
Whoa, careful. Sword traps the souls of its victims. So what? Don't piss her off.